Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode. And in the last one, we were able to handle some issues on our backend, so more like an adjustment. And in this one, we are hoping to actually round up our chat app and resolve all the pending issues we have on the front end. So we are starting with the search user list. So let's start off from that. Okay, so here is a hub, and as we can see from the physics we added in the last episode, this has become 0. So we only get to see number of chats based on someone who's chatting the logged in user. And as soon as we've read the message, we are going to also update that so that it reflects that we really don't have any message to check on again. All right. So, well, that's not where we are starting. Like I said, we are starting from the search user list. So let's get onto that. And to actually see the effect of this, we might have to create more users. So that way we can see as our chat flow is actually going. So I will quickly create more users and yeah. Alright guys, so I've created a couple of users, so Tom Welling, Sinadi Femi, Ben Tennyson, John Magnus, and Angela Hallen. And yeah, I think from what we can see now, it looks like we need to resolve this 0 thing. So let's quickly get to that and resolve that. So if it's 0, then it shouldn't be showing anything. Right, so here is our code interface, and we can find our way back to the home components. Hopefully that's where this should be located, right? Yeah, so I think that should be the user avatar. So if no status, okay, that's not it. Okay, so this is the count here. All right, so let's try something up here. So let's say props.count. Let's just create a temporary variable. So let's count equals to 0. Then we can now say count is greater than 0 and this. So let's see if that works. So count is greater than 0 and this. So count is not defined. Let's define it here. Oh, okay, underscore count. And let's check again. Alright, so we didn't see anything. So what we can now do here is we can say if props dot count. So if prop dot count exists, then we can now check the integer version. So if pass int, so let's pass int into props.count is greater than 0, then count equals to, so we can just use any props.count at this point, it won't matter again. Right, so let's see if we've resolved that. Alright, so I think this time around we are not seeing anything. Alright, so that's by the way. So our major focus at this point is with the user search. So we should be able to search users using our search text box up here. And with this, I'm going to introduce something called debouncing. So debouncing is like an effect whereby you have to actually type in a couple of tests before the search is actually considered. Okay, so this is such that it won't allow every item, every changes you make to be sent to the back end for check. So let's undo that. All right, so if we go back to our home, and from there we should see the user list here, which is here. Now we want to search through our user. So let's create a new variable called search const search, then set search. So use state, by default is going to be an empty string. Okay, so get user list from what we have here. And yeah, what we can do is we can actually make this such that we just have this one single function to work with. And yeah, we can just do that. So what we are going to do on this profile URL is to have something like an extra field. So by default, the extra field is, so let's say let extra equals to an empty string by default. So we can now have more information here. So if search is not equivalent to an empty, so if it's not an empty string, then we can now say extra plus equals to, so we are like appending to it. So plus equals to, we now add our keyword. So well, I think I'll just put this as yeah, as keyword. All right, so let's start from the extra itself. Let it be an extension of the question mark. So it's going to be question mark by default. So that means this can now be and keyword equals to. So let's use a string and a variable string. All right, so now here we can now have our search here, and with this we can extend this. Oh, okay, so I guess we don't even need this since we have a query parameter at the first part here. So we can remove this extra. We can, yeah, we just need this, and now we can now say $extra. So in case there is nothing, then we just have an empty string, but if there is, then we add keyword here. All right, so now we can now put the search as a changer here. Not really like this, so let's have it, because what we are doing with this is that once we make any changes, then this will affect, and that is not what we want to have with our debounce. So we want to have a separate thing. All right, so let's have another variable called const can search. So we'll use this to manage our debounce and set can search. All right, so I actually just thought of something. We might not actually be using a separate variable, and instead we can take the search component itself to a separate component where we can handle a state from there. And whenever we've reached the content we are looking for our search, we can now push it back to this part where it now updates the search. So I think that might actually work best. All right, so user main, yeah, we have the input search here. So let's just put this within a separate component. So we can just call this search debounce. So we are going to send in the search, not really the search, but set search. So set search is set search, and that should be all we need. So it will be this component will be the one to control what is within our search from there. So now we can say const search debounce equals to props. Then we return our components. Alright, so now we can just bring in this search again. Then we can still have the use effect to check if the changes we've added to our search is actually what we want. So use effect. So search. Alright. So now let's add the necessary content here. So the value is going to be search. Then we have on change. On change, we get the event. Then we set search into event.target.value. Alright. Now we want to create an external variable, so just call this let's. So let's search, all right, or rather the bounce. So let's the bounce time out equals to, yeah, so for now just empty. All right, so this debounce timeout is going to be a variable that handles the time it takes us between different key type. So the idea is that when you are typing, so unless you became idle for about a second, then you won't send in your search content. You won't send it to the parent component here. All right, so let's actually put this into perspective. So now we can say the bounce. So every time you make changes, we can just clear the bounce timeout. So clear timeout. That's the bounce timeout. Then we can set another one, the bounce timeout equals to set timeout. So every 1 second, so that's 1000 milliseconds. And we want to actually push what we have currently on the search to the, what do you call it, the parent search component here. So we can also do more things. We can say if the length of the search is less than 1 or is less than 2, we can't search. So maybe we want to search only when the length of the search string here is more than 2. So there are also other things we can put. But for now, we only want to search if the length of the search is above 1. So if at least there is something. So if search is not equivalent to empty string, then want to props dot set search into search. All right, and that's how we want it. So this should also affect this, and all what we have here should be put into consideration. And yeah, with this, I think what we have should work. All right, so let's test it out. So for some reason, our image here is out. So let's quickly trace and see what's wrong. So this search, all right, so it's claiming a different variable name. So let me just use this as search image. So they were fighting for who bears the variable name. All right, so I think that should resolve it. All right, so let's now search. So let's say, so if I keep typing, nothing will happen. But once I release, it should have an effect. So as you can see, you do not have any user to chat with. So if I clear out and so this should go back to, all right. So I think the issue now is that we told it not to do any search when it's an empty string, and actually that's an error. So we actually don't want this particular check. So let's just push this directly, and that should resolve. Okay, so let's try that again. So we shouldn't see any user. Then let's clear out. We should have our users back. So let me type Oseni. All right, so we got only Oseni. So let's type maybe, so let's type just A. Yeah, so we have Ben Tennyson out. And that's literally it for our search. So the next thing is paginate user list. So it looks like we've set up a ground for the pagination. However, with what we have here, we can't really see the effect. So one way to do this is either to go to the backend to reduce the number of users that comes out, maybe by maybe to just one, so paginate number of users to just one, or we can create multiple users later on to check this. So we'll probably effect those later on. So the next one is the favorite users. So I think we've set up something for that, and order the list with favorite. So I think with what we have currently, this should be ordered by favorite, but unless we don't have any favorite user yet. So let's test this by clicking on Angela and adding Angela to our favorites. Okay. So here is Angela. Angela has an image, so we've not pushed an image to this part. So let's quickly do that. So back to our own components, or rather the chat interface. Then on the chat interface, we have the user. So this is the favorite image. So the avatar profile picture, active user. Okay, so for some reason, doesn't show here. So let's see what's going on. So console.log props.active user.profile picture. Alright, so we still need to put the file upload there. So we can now say, so if props.active user.profile picture, then we want to push the file upload. So active user, then profile picture dot file upload. Alright, so let's see if that has resolved. Alright, so that's okay now. Alright, so for the favorites, we need a different color of the star to actually show when we favorite a user, and also we can check if we favorite a user or not. Alright, so let's quickly do that. And first, let's have a variable that says is favorite. So with that, we can now interchange between the two pictures. So const is favorite and set is favorite. So by default it's going to be false. So use states false. Alright, so we can just go back to the Figma design and just get a different color for the star. Alright, so here is the star here. So we can just duplicate this, then give it a different color. So I think I'll go with this. Then we can download it. So we'll just export. So now we can go back to Visual Studio Code, then import our Fav Active. So let's see where we imported the others. So we have the others here. So we can just import favorite active from assets Fav Active. Alright, so that's that. So we can now copy this, so we can interchange the favorite icon based on these two. Okay, so if is, okay, let's have a space, is favorite, then we want to have the favorite active, else we want to have just the favorite. So let's confirm this first. Yeah, I think that looks good. So the first thing we can actually do is we can create a function that checks if it's favorite. We defined that on the backend last time. So let's quickly do that. So const check is favorite. Let's just use this fav into an async function. Alright, so for this we need the active ID. So we need the active user ID, and I think what we have here is just the URL. So what we can do is we can say const results equals to await Asio's handler into method. So not the okay method. The method here will be get. Then the URL will be. So I think we defined that under our user URL. So let's come back here to define that. So under user, then under check, so check favorite, then it takes in one more entry, which is the ID of the user we want to check. Right, so we can come here and say check. Oh, I think we've not changed the name. Check favorite URL. Then we can come here, check favorite URL. I believe Visual Studio Code would not have updated that. So let's just extend this. So check favorite URL, then plus the active user ID, so which is this. Then we send in our token. So we need to get the token. Alright, so the token will be token equals to our await get token. Then we can just put our token here. Alright, so that's all we need. So let's cache if there's an error. So let's just console log it. So console.log e. Then so if results, then let's just console log the results. So console.log results. Okay, so result.data. So the idea around here is that we always going to get either a true or false. So let's see what we have with that. So inspect console. Okay, we've not called that function. Okay, so let's call the function when we on our use effect, if we have one, update message, yeah, use effect, then check is favorite. Okay, here we got an error. Alright, so let's see where that is coming from. No such table as user control. Oh, alright. Okay, so the error I have here is as a result of me not pushing or not making my migration when I push to the server. So let me quickly resolve that. Alright, so I'm back. I've made the necessary changes. So let's refresh and see. Alright, so this time around this is coming in well and it's false. So that means we've not added this user to our favorite list. And yeah, what we can do is so result.data, that's false. Okay, so we can just set its favorite to what we get from here. So let's quickly do that. Alright, so that should resolve that. Then next is when we click on the star. So let's say update favorite. So let's create a const. So const update fav. So this is going to be an async function again. Alright, so the way I like to handle things like this is the moment I just click on the update, I want the effect to be shown immediately. I don't want to wait. However, I can later just update it. Let's say the process was not successful. I can later remove it. Okay. So what I want to do is whenever I click on the update fav, I want to just set is favorite into not his favorites. Okay, and that should resolve that. Then we can now await. So const result equals to await. So we want to have the Azure sampler as usual. So first let's get the token. Okay, so the method here is going to be post. Then the URL is going to be what we have here. So the update favorites. So let's define that on the URL list. So update favorite URL. Then this becomes update favorites. And there's no backslash. Alright, so let's copy this so that you don't have to wait for Visual Studio Code to update it. Alright, so we've done that. So let's connect things together. So URL here becomes update favorite URL. Then the data. So from our backend here, so this takes in the favorite ID. So we are sending favorite ID. So let's come back here. So favorite ID will now be the active user ID. which is here. Okay, and finally the token. Our token. Then we can now check for error. So let's just copy the cache info we have here. So now instead of rather caching here, okay, so we can cache our error here and we can now check. So if results, so rather we are not checking if result, we are checking if not result this time around. So if there's an error, then we want to just return this back to the opposite, and that's all we are doing. Okay, so that's our update favorite function, and all we have to do now is to come down to our image. Then let's add the onClick. So onClick equals to update fav, and that should be it. So let's click on it now. Now we get this star. So I'm hoping that Angela should come first on our list if we reload. So let's try. Alright, so that didn't happen. That didn't happen. This should be Angela coming first. However, Sinadifemi is still coming first. So I think we still need to resolve that. So also let's add John Magnus. Okay, on clicking of John Magnus, this didn't reflect. However, if we reload, we probably won't have that. So Angela didn't this reflect as well. So I think we want to have the check be made whenever there's changes in our click. So we can just come down to where we are calling the use effects. So use effects here, not this. Yeah, this one. So let's make it props dot active user. So if active user is changing, then we want to recall on that. However, we still need to fix our ordering. So Angela is here. So John Magnus, okay, that's reflected. Ben Tennyson, that's not the family great. Then Angela again. Alright, so let's add John Magnus now. Then Angela, then Ben Tennyson, then that's not the family great. Alright, so based on our lists, we've been able to handle user search. We've been able to handle favorite list. However, the ordering is not correct. So that's a backend issue we have to fix from the backend. Then the paginate user list. Okay, we should also resolve the pending message count. Then the paginate user list is still an issue we need to resolve. Alright, so I would make it like, I'll kind of create a mock-up kind of structure. So I would duplicate this such that it takes up to that count. Then we can just have an idea of what we are implementing. So let's quickly get onto that. So on the user lists, and if we're able to implement the user list, then we just duplicate the same functionality for the message itself. So on the user list, we can duplicate this some more. So we have user main. All right, so we now have 5 times. So this is 20, and this is what we should have from the backend. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So now what we are trying to do is that as soon as we scroll to the bottom here, or almost to the bottom, then, and if it can go next, then we want to fetch the rest of the users. And yeah, so that's what we want to do. And whatever we get as a result, we just append. So we are not replacing, we are appending to the list. So the effect that we are going to have with this is that we just get to see the list of the users we have on the platform. Right, so the first thing we want to do is to have the unscroll. So as soon as we scroll, we should track that change, and that should be under the user lists. Yeah, so unscroll, undo scroll. So let's create a function to undo our scroll. Const undo scroll. So let's actually say that we are getting an event. So e, then console.log e. Okay, let's open our console. Alright, so it's complaining about the way we duplicated things. Okay, so this is just an arc. Alright, so as we scroll, as we can see, we got the information, and all we just need to know here is to know when we want to make our changes. So we want to know the distance from the bottom. So let's quickly calculate that. So, and the formula to handle this is going to be if e dot scroll top is equivalent to e dot scroll height minus e dot offset height. Right, so that's what we are checking. So this is what to know if it has reached the bottom. However, we're still going to add like a bit so that it doesn't really reach the bottom before we get we start fetching for other users. So let's quickly have this. So const console.log reach. So let's just reach bottom. All right. So let's check this out. So if we scroll, nothing happens until we reach the bottom. Nothing happens still. That's weird. Okay, so let's just replace the e to e dot target. So e dot target, e dot target, then e dot target, and hopefully we should reach the bottom this time around. So if we scroll, nothing until we reach the bottom. Yeah, so we reach the bottom this time around. However, I wanted to reach the bottom earlier enough so that we won't really see any lag while we are showing the users. So we can update this offset. So let's add maybe, let's say 100 to it. And let's see how soon it's going to reach the bottom. So alright, so the error we had the other time was as a result of we using equals to. So that means it's only checking if it has reached the bottom. But now I've changed it to greater than or equals to. So now I can now reduce the offset. So that means before it actually gets to the bottom, with an offset of 100, then we can start checking for other users. So as a result of this, let's just observe where we have to scroll to assume we've reached the bottom. So around here. So I think that's still too small. Let's make it 150. Alright, so that should do it. So now we've handled scroll to the bottom, so we can now take note of where to actually push to the next content. Now if we go back to our get user list, so we have the set next page to something else like that. So what we can do is, so basically what we want to do is, if we've reached the bottom, then we want to get user lists again. But this time around, we've updated the next page, as you can see. However, there is something we still need to actually put here. So that would be a variable to say can go next. Okay, so let's quickly have that. So const can go next set can go next. So by default, this will be false. And every time we try to get our user list, we want to set that to false. So set can go next equals to false, as you can see. Okay, so that's about that. Then the next thing is, if user nests, then we increment this and we set can go next equals to true. Alright, so now if we come back to the handle scroll, we want to actually check if can go next. If can go next, then we want to get user lists. So however, I want to send an extra parameter here. So I'll just say append. So that's the parameter I'm sending. Or let me say true. So that should be defined on that part. So this will be append equals to false by default. And yeah, so instead of setting users directly, I can say if append, then do this, else, do something else. So the else will now be what we have here by default. Then if append, we can now have this. Alright, so from here we can just say, so instead of appending this directly, so we spread through the existing user list. So users, then we then add the new one. So this is going to be an array. That means we have to spread it through. Alright, so that should be it. So if it's an append, then we just append it to it. So however, when you scroll now, this will not do anything unless we remove this. Okay, let's just check again. So nothing really happened. However, let's remove the can go next and let's see us getting more users. Okay, let's scroll. As you can see, we keep getting users. Okay, we got an error at some point. Okay, we keep getting users as you can see. Alright, but it looks like our update is not functioning well. The handle scroll to the bottom. Or maybe the server is just slow, whichever way. But as we can see, that's what functioning well. So if we observe the app and we realize that it's not working the way we want, then we can as well just fix it. Or better still, let's reduce this to 200. However, this has to be if can go next. So if can go next, then we have that. Okay, so that is it about that, and we can remove this and return this back to the way it was. Alright, so we don't have any issue. So the next one is the message, and by default when you click on message, so no message with Hussein Adefemi, no message with any user. So by default when we click on message, it scrolls to the bottom. So what we want to check is when it scroll to the top, when we have scrolled to the top. So let's do that. So that should be on our chat interface. So we might actually want to use a different user here so that we get an effect. Okay, as you can see, that's automatically scrolled to the bottom. But for some reason, Ben Tennyson is at the top for this person. Okay, I think that's just the flow. So Angela Allen, then Tom Welling. Alright, so we have this. So let's see undo scroll. So undo. So let's define a function undo scroll. So we get the event, then we get this. Alright, so where is our message interface? So this is the chat area. So we can just say on scroll equals to undo scroll. Alright, so we want to check if we scroll to the top. So we can say, alright, so let's observe again. Alright, so we want to check if the scroll top has reached maybe around 100. So if e.target.scroll top is less than or equals to 100, so that's when we want to start getting other messages. And yeah, from our message list to get messages, we have something of we have there. So set can go next to be false. Then next page is the same thing. So we just want to send in the append flag. So this would be append equals to false. Then yeah, so here we are setting the user the messages. Okay, so here we want to append. So first we need to reverse the message, then we can append it. Alright, so let's just have it as, okay, so let's have this like this. So if append else, so else is what we are doing by default. So we want to have this as spread. So spread the messages, then spread this as well, and that should be it. So this would now be if can go next. Then we can say get messages into true. So we want to append by default is false. And yeah, if we have more messages, that should resolve it. I don't think we do. So let's just try and type so much message. So hello Ben. So I'll just open another chat at the side. Alright, so let me just open a chat with Ben itself. Then Ben's password. Alright, so as you can see, we got 10 messages that Ben has not read from Christina Defemi. Then we can click on it. Okay, so if we reload now, we shouldn't have that again because it will have updated. Alright, so let's just chat. So hello Femi, how are you doing today? I'm fine, thanks. Good to know. Yeah. What's up? Nothing much. Alright, so I'm hoping that we've reached up to 20 messages. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so alright, so we've entered a deadlock. So hello Ben. Alright, so yeah, I think the issue we are having here is that every time we fetch a message, we've designed it in such a way that it should always scroll to the bottom. Unless we are appending, that's when we don't want it to scroll to the bottom. So let's make that an effect as well. So if we go back to get messages, so here is scroll to the bottom. So if append, so if not append, that's when we want it to scroll to the bottom. Alright, so let's check it out again. Oh, alright, so I think I got another lead. So we are appending the wrong way. So the old messages should actually come first. So this should be like this. Yeah. So the new message should come first and the old one should be already there. Okay, so let's check it out again. Oh, okay. Okay, that still didn't work. So what's up? How are you doing? Hello. Okay, it actually worked, but still more like a repetition. I think there are still a couple of stuff to undo here. Okay, let's look at how it's making the requests. So if we scroll to the top, okay. So I think there are, as you can see, it's making a lot of requests, and that's not good for us. So we want to set a timeout, or better still, we want it to be such that when it has made a request, then it can't make any unless it has resolved the first. So I think this should be for both the message as well as the user list. So what we want to do here is, if it's append, so when we make a message here, so let me say undo scroll. Alright, so they can just set a state. So const gone, okay, let's say gone next. So set gone next, set gone next equals to use state. So by default it's going to be false. And what we want to do here is when we make our requests here, so we are getting messages at this point. So we want to set gone next to be false. So I actually don't think gone next has to be a state because it's not making an effect here. So let's create it as a variable. So let's say let gone next equals to false. Okay. So it's going to be a variable because it's not really a state situation. Because if we're handling it as a state, there's possibility where we might even miss it before we make our request. So let's say, so when we try to get message, so let's set gone next equals to true. So if can go next and not gone next. So if it has not gone and can go, then we want to do this. So now before we can actually take another message or take another request, we want to ensure that we've freed that. So we can just do that from here. So if append, then gone next equals to false again. So let's do the same thing for the user list. I'm pretty sure that should work. So let's say let's gone next equals to false. Then we can set it back to false when we've actually gotten the user. So if append, then we can now undo it here. So if can go next and not gone next. Alright, so let's check this out now. So if we scroll to the top, so we only get one. So let's see, it looks like we have duplicates. So hello, how are you doing? Nothing much. So nothing much was what we ended with here. So we are still getting the same nothing much. So let's see what we have here. So the URL is, okay, as you can see, the URL is literally just the same thing. We are not adding the pagination content to it. Okay, as you can see, there's really nothing we are adding here to make it fetch something otherwise. So let's quickly undo that. So back to our chat interface. So next page is 1, and when we get message, we didn't add the next page to it. So let's do that. So user ID and page equals to next page. So if there is next, then can go next is this. Alright, so I really don't know why it's going next if it actually doesn't have something to go. Alright, so let's check it out again. Alright, so I think we just got hello Ben this time around and nothing more. Okay, so nothing much. Then hello Ben. Oh, okay, so we got this. Alright, so I think it's working now. Let's try it again. Okay, so we got hello Ben, hello world. We added that, and that should be it. It shouldn't scroll up again. Alright, so I guess we've been able to resolve that then, and I guess the same thing for the user list as well. And based on this note, we've been able to literally handle user search list, paginate user list and messages. However, our ordering based on favorite is not working yet. So I would work on this on the side notes, and whatever I was able to resolve, I will share with us later on. And yeah, I think with that we should be able to actually close up our chat app. Yeah, and also I will deploy this as soon as I've done that. I will share with us so that we can use and just test run it to see how well it works. And in case we want to have the file upload, if we want to see how that is done, even though we've set up the basis for that, you can just message me on my networks. I would reply. So if I get enough of requests, then I'll just create that so that we can both learn from it. And on this note, I will call it a section, or let me call it not a day, but a section on our chat app. And hopefully in the next episode, I'm looking at converting this into a mobile app using Flutter. So if we want that, then let me know in the comment below so that we can start working on that. I'm also looking at creating an e-commerce website. So an approach I would come into that. So because one thing I've been trying to actually put into this tutorials is to bring an approach. So an approach I will use to handle things and actually see how things will go. Yeah, so on this note, I would like to drop my pen. See you guys in the next episode, whichever we decide to start and buy. So yeah, I would appreciate our subscriptions, our likes, our comments, and our feedbacks. Thanks, guys, and see you.